Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about how long is a long-term rental agreement. In today's real estate, we're not just talking about rentals that fit into one category specifically, but potentially into multiple different categories. So one might wonder, how long is a long-term rental agreement? Well, by the end of this video, you'll have a solid understanding of how long a typical long-term rental agreement is, what to expect in terms of rights and responsibilities, and how you can make the most out of that rental agreement. Have you ever wondered what legally qualifies as a long-term rental? With rentals being all over the board, are you curious about the most common lease lengths and the flexibility that you might have when negotiating? Well, stay tuned as I cover all the essentials by first detailing out the different types of rentals. Next, I'll help you identify what qualifies as a long-term rental. And finally, what strategies you can utilize with long-term rentals and what I am currently doing right now when it comes to long-term rentals. If you're ready, let's go. So the first thing is rentals, and this might be the easiest to understand. You own a single family home, a condo, a duplex, a townhome, and you rent it out to a person that needs a place to rent. It's that simple. When I bought my first condo, the first place I ever owned, I lived there, and as a couple of years went by, I wanted to build my own home. When I built that home, I had in mind that I wanted somebody to help me to pay the mortgage. So in that home, I built a basement apartment that I could rent out as part of the home. Even though that didn't cover my mortgage, it helped pay for it. Plus, I kept my condo and rented that out as well. Another rental that could be considered in that category, maybe even if single family homes or duplexes, condos, townhomes, are short-term rentals. That is a term you've probably heard of and one that's gained massive popularity over the years. But a short-term rental is rented out in smaller units, 30 days or less typically. But many of them average less than 7-night stays in the short-term rental. So short-term rental is what you consider on Airbnb or VRBO when you go on vacation and you're looking for an alternative to a hotel. A short-term rental or vacation rental is just that, where the rental period is less than 30 days, typically 2 to 7 nights is what we've typically seen when it comes to short-term rentals. So what qualifies as a long-term rental? Typically, it's anything that is longer than 6 months up to 15 months. And that's usually the length of the lease before a new lease is needed to be put in place or negotiated. Long-term leases, especially longer-term leases, are preferred by landlords because it guarantees a steadier stream of income because of the rent payments that are coming in or guaranteed to come in over that longer lease period of time. But understand the lease term duration can vary based on the goals or the situation that the property is in. So long-term rental agreements aren't difficult to understand, but the strategies utilizing long-term rental agreements is one that might take a minute to grasp. So let's talk about some of these strategies where you would utilize a long-term rental agreement. So the basic one is just a rental agreement for a piece of property that you own. So you own a home, a condo, a townhome, and you turn around and you rent that out as a unit for somebody to live in, and they pay you rent. There's a duration of time that is set up where they're supposed to be guaranteed to make those payments over the period of the lease. It's pretty straightforward and one that most people completely understand. The components are basic. You have the term, whether that's a shorter term lease or a longer term lease. Obviously, if you're the landlord, you're trying to get as long a lease as possible. If you're the person renting, you'd like that to be as little time as possible because you want the flexibility of being able to stay there or move in a different direction. But in some states, they require at least 6 months to even be considered a long-term rental agreement. Now, also a component of that long-term rental agreement is price or the rental, the lease payment that's going to be made every single month, a security deposit. Many long-term rental agreements will require a security deposit. What that means that you have to put a deposit down to make sure nothing goes wrong or nothing's broken in the property that you couldn't afford to pay down the road. And if something does happen, they can keep that security deposit. However, if you're a good tenant, if you're in that property and you exit that property and it's in great condition, most of the time you get that security deposit back. And then there's a part of the agreement, long-term rental agreement, of who pays maintenance, who pays for utility costs. That should all be negotiated in a long-term rental agreement. And then one final element that's sometimes very important if you are putting together a long-term rental agreement, whether you're the landlord or you're the renter, is to have a termination clause. And that will detail out if there is a way to terminate the clause prior to the end date of the lease duration. So now that we understand the components of a long-term rental agreement, let's talk about some really cool strategies. Matter of fact, I'm utilizing these strategies right now for my own real estate investing. The first one's called a slow flip. A slow flip works like this. I'm currently looking in the Midwest. I'm looking to find homes that are hopefully below $70,000. And I'm looking to get these homes anywhere between 25 to 35% below asking price or below market value. Now, to get that, I've got to put offer on probably 10 to 15 homes before I get one of them accepted. So I'm putting a lot of offers out there, but I'm offering cash and I'm offering a quick close with a quick inspection, right? And I'm looking for homes that don't have a lot of problems, move-in ready, right? There might be a few cosmetic things that could be done or a few minor repairs, but we're talking maybe hundreds or maybe at the low thousands of dollars to get that repair done. Now, when I have that home, I have it under contract, I am then going to look at somebody who wants to buy that home from me at probably market value, but they can't get a traditional loan, so it'll be seller financed. I will become the bank. Now, I'm borrowing the money to purchase the home outright from a private investor, and I'm looking for that private investor that will only charge me 8 to 10%. Now, some of you might say that's impossible. There's nobody that's willing to do that. I've got a couple right now that are lending to me between 8 to 10%. And so my whole goal is to pay back this private lender as if I were getting a car loan. So within 5, 6, or 7 years, it would be my payback to them. So my payments amortized over 5, 6, or 7 years would be the payment to this private money lender that would be paid back in 5, 6, or 7 years. However, I am now going to be a seller finance to the person buying it from me on an amortized rate over 30 years. And I'm utilizing a land contract, and that's going to be very important to understand that you need to utilize a land contract when you're doing these slow flips. What I'm trying to do, because I'm selling it out for, say, maybe 40, 50% greater than what I bought it for, their mortgage payment to me over 30 years needs to supersede the payment that I'm making to the private money lender, right? Because if my payment to him is $900 and the payment I'm getting from the new buyer is only $800, I'm underwater every single month. So I might have to tweak the interest payment and the price to get it so that that payment from the new buyer can cover my payment to the private money lender. And that's why I said it might be 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, because if I need to amortize that out to where the payment's lower than what I'm receiving, I'll need to do that. But here's the cool thing about a slow flip. Now, you're not gonna make a ton of money every single month doing this, but if that payment is greater than what you're paying to the private money lender, and you have, say, 10, 15, 20 of these homes out there doing that, where they're covering all your expense, and because they're buying it from you, they're responsible for the taxes, the maintenance, the utilities, everything. Your only cost is the payment to the private money lender. But when this is paid off, if you got 10 of those homes, if you're making on average, say, $1,000 a month, and you have 10 of those, once your private money lenders are paid off, for the next 23 to 25 years, you've got $10,000 a month coming in on properties that are paid for free and clear. So it's a really cool strategy that is working right now really well in the real estate investing market. And one other strategy I'm doing right now that's very similar to a slow flip, but I call it cash flow flipping, because there's a lot of people that say, listen, if I'm not making any money each month with these properties, why would I do that? Well, it's a longer term play, right? You have the end in mind. But there's a strategy right now that I call cash flow flipping that I'm utilizing a lease option for this. So the same thing is happening where I'm looking for undervalued properties in the Midwest that I'm getting below $70,000, 25 to 35% below market value. I'm still using a private money lender, and they might charge me a little bit more, but let's say that I found one that charged me 12% and I get a property that I'm buying outright cash for $50,000. I'm gonna make an interest-only payment to the private money lender. So 12% of $50,000 is $6,000 annually or $500 a month. That's what I'm required to pay to the private money lender because it's an interest-only loan. Now, same thing, I go out and I find a buyer who wants to buy this property at market value or just above market value because I'm going to utilize a lease option on this, which is a rent-to-own strategy, which means they're going to buy the property to me at a certain price at a certain time down the road, and typically I'm shooting for 2 years. So let's say I got a property at $50,000, I'm selling it for $72,000, and they're purchasing it or they're going to close on it 2 years from now. But during that 2-year period of time, they're renting this property from me in a rent-to-own strategy. And there's a couple ways to make money. The fact that they can buy this property from me 2 years down the road and lock it up at a certain price, they've got to pay me some money. And typically an option price is anywhere between 2 to 7% of the purchase price. So let's just say they paid me $1,000 to lock that in. I've got $1,000. Now, as part of a lease option payment, their monthly rent payment, I'm going to count $100 of their payment every single month to go towards their down payment. So let's say they're paying me $950 a month. I'm going to take $100 of that, and 100 times 24 is $2,400 a month. Now they gave me $1,000 for the option price, so 1,000 plus 2,400. They're going to have, when they close on this property, $3,400 to utilize towards a down payment. And if they can get in with 5% down, they're almost going to have their entire down payment already in play to do that. Now, the cool thing about this, let's say they execute in 2 years. I've made roughly, for the $500 a month to the $850 a month, I've made $350 a month, so I'm cash flowing. And then once they buy that property, they've just given me $72,000 minus the $3,400 that I've counted towards it, right? So let's just call it around $70,000 I'll receive. I'll take the $70,000. I will pay the $50,000 to the private money lender. I'm left with $20,000. And you can do this all day, every day. It's a fantastic strategy. So this is something that I'm currently doing with a long-term rental agreement, but I would be interested in your feedback. What strategies are you currently using? Please comment below. Let's engage in a dialogue. And as always, just for stopping by and watching this video, I've got a free gift for you. It is my short-term rental calculator. You input the price of the home, the income, the expenses, and this software will spit out to you whether it is a good deal or not. 100% free, no obligations. Just click on the link below, aaronsfreetraining.com. Thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.